05.
Okay, we're going to get this started. Welcome everyone to WACBE seminar, our Distinguished Biomedical Engineering webinar series hosted by the World Association for Chinese Biomedical Engineers. My name is Ed Guo, the department chair and the professor of biomedical engineering at Columbia University. And with me is also the Bin-Mei Fu, professor at the City College, Department of Biomedical Engineering. So in terms of the webinar format, our speaker will present for approximately 14 minutes, but I think Dr. Wu, you can do whatever you want. And we will leave 15 to 20 minutes at the end for question and answer. So through the presentation, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen to submit your questions. Please using Q&A such that we can able to follow in the questions, make it also easier to follow questions. We'll get to as many questions possible during the Q&A sessions. So today, we are excited to kick off the series with a very distinguished guest, Professor Savio Wu. Professor Wu is a pioneer in orthopedic bioengineering. He is a distinguished university professor emeritus, director of Musculoskeletal Research Center at the University of Pittsburgh. Currently, he is a distinguished chair professor of bioengineering at the Taipei Medical University, Taiwan. He is an elected member of National Academy of Engineering, National Academy of Science, for Medicine of USA, and Academia Sinica. He received many awards and medals. He's the only bioengineer who, probably engineer, anybody, scientist, who received the Olympic gold medal and the IOC prize for sports medicine. He served as president of many major societies, and most importantly for today, he's the founding president of World Association of Chinese Biomedical Engineers. So please welcome Dr. Wu. So I will unshare and stop the video. So Bin-Mei, you should stop your video. Yeah. Dr. Wu, you can start.
Okay. Okay, everybody sees me?
Yes.
I'm good. Well, Ed, thank you very much for your very kind introduction and also for your wonderful arrangement for us to have this through your Columbia University network. And I also like to thank the okay, let's see. I also want to thank the World Association of Chinese Biomedical Engineering Council. This is the leadership of this organization at the 8th World Congress in Hong Kong, and last year in 9th Congress in Taipei. At the May meeting, we all do things by Zoom now, and the council have decided with some background work done by leading members of the council that we should have this webinar, and we appointed Dr. Bin-Mei Fu, and she heads her committee to select me as the first one. I am the guinea pig for this event. And they were very kind, and everyone was enthusiastic to do this distinguished webinar series. Now, I have given Dr. Fu many topics, and she chose the one that I've talked about my academic career. And a few days later, I happened to see on the comic strips. And about Beetle Bailey is one of my favorite comic strips. It says this general wants to write autobiography, and maybe he needs to hire a writer. And so the lieutenant asked him why. He said, well, it wouldn't be right for me to embellish my own career. In some respect, this is also true for what you're about to hear. So I am excited about giving you, telling you my life story, but I'm also a little bit nervous and feel very strange that I am actually speaking, sitting in my chair and looking at a computer screen, telling you my story. There are a couple of goals that I want to try to achieve. But before I do that, I want to let you know that maybe my destiny was a translational research. As my PhD student, I did the structural analysis of the cornea scleral shell, the eyeball. And I, of course, at that time, I used a trilinear method to describe the nonlinear property of the cornea and scleral, and also using finite element analysis, axisymmetric model, 538 elements to describe how the deformation and how's the pressure in the eye and the volume. This was trying to understand the glaucoma and testing of glaucoma by tonometry. And after I'm done, I decided that with my professor that we should publish in a clinical journal because we feel that was the audience rather than say Journal of Biomechanics. So I prepared a manuscript with this kind of figure and formulas that ophthalmologists have never seen. After a couple of years of argument with the editor, Maurice, and he finally acquiesced to let us publish this in the experimental eye research in 1972. So it was 2 years effort to get that published. And nobody actually referenced it, but until the last 10 years, this suddenly become a very popular manuscript. And I also, before I finished, I helped an orthopedic resident. We were good friends and did an analysis of normal and regenerated or repair articular cartilage, which is much inferior in properties. And I suggest that we use this kind of a viscoelastic model. And we also, it was a good experimental study. I just did the analysis. And we argued with Journal of Bone and Joint Surgery again for 2 years to get it published. And I think these kind of graph and formula were the first and maybe the last ever published in Journal of Bone and Joint Surgery. So with that as a background, I do want to share with you my academic career of the last 5 decades. My hope is that those of you who are young faculty or just about to start your career in academia, that my message can be helpful in your decision making, whatever you want to do. To the middle level faculty, I hope my lecture will help you strengthen your resolve. And for the senior professors and my colleagues, friends, and family, please treat this as cheap entertainment. So my academic career is in 5 different steps. First step is on development, and I conveniently divide them by decades. So in the 1970s, and then the second step is growth in the 1980s, and I know more maturation is in the 1990s. And after that, I think why I continue to do my work with my team, we start working on efficacy and that kind of responsibility. And for the last decade, it is pretty much sort of prognostication as something that I've been asked to do. I want to tell you some stories in my philosophy in each of these decades of career development, and also to share with you some translational research and maybe give you one example of the work we have done during that decade. First, development. In 1970, I was hired as an assistant professor in Department of Orthopedics and Department of Bioengineering. At that time was Ames at the University of California, San Diego. I was very fortunate to get a position because my connection with the orthopedic surgeon at University of Washington when I was a student. Even though I was working on the eye, we get along, and he recommended me to join him at UCSD. Well, at UCSD, first thing is that you have to learn a new field, orthopedics, because I was in ophthalmology, and identify what are the relevant clinical problems and that you can work on. And I learned also to collaborate with people that are very different from me, biochemists, clinicians, surgeons, and they always want to find new methods to solve their problems. And then we need to design apparatus and for various experimental studies. In a couple of years, we were able to identify 3 major areas that we can work on to improve plating of long bone fractures and healing articular cartilage with some scaffold, and soft tissue ligaments and tendons, and study joint function. Now, none of these were what I was trained for, but I just want to share this with you because it is really not that important that you carry what you have learned as a PhD student into academic career. Many of you are doing that today, but don't limit yourself because there are many, many opportunities out there. And as long as you have learned the process of doing something, you will be able to adapt to another area or even another field. So with the help of my colleagues, we wrote 6 grant applications, and they were all funded because you need money to do all these things you want to do. And then I was able to go from a 3 by 6 feet bench, which was my laboratory, to actually a laboratory and recruit my graduate students. Now, in the career development, the first thing I suggest you do is to find a mentor. Everyone needs a mentor. And I don't mean just a mentor, is somebody that is real, that likes you and you like him or her, and you can get a lot of good advice. Fortunately for me, I found Professor Y.C. Feng. We get along really, really well. And this is really a blessing in my life to have Dr. Feng mentoring me for 20 years. And I learned from Dr. Feng how to do things, solidify my process of research. And for example, in biomechanics, he taught us 8 different steps. You learn morphology, anatomy, get the mechanical properties, apply fundamental laws of physics, boundary conditions, and solve boundary value problems. And then you perform experiments to test these solutions, validate it, and then you can employ the theory to predict outcome of other conditions, other situations. And that's how engineering, bioengineering, biomechanics in particular, that I've learned and we try to do. Of course, these days, things have changed a bit because we have a lot more experiments than theory. But I think sometime we'll have to come back to these fundamentals. Unfortunately, Dr. Feng passed away last December, 3 months after we celebrate his centennial birthday. He was I call him a 5G man. He's definitely a genius, as most of us know him. He's a giant in the field. He's a very, very generous person, and he's genuine and gentle to top that. And I wrote a memoriam with the help of many others. Excuse me. And we published for the SB33 conference earlier this month. And the memoriam will also, for convenience of others, that in the Journal of Biomechanics and maybe a couple more journals, so that all you young people can learn more about him. And we really respectfully, and of course for me, fondly, call him the father of modern biomechanics. Now, during that decade, I developed a strong desire to serve. I volunteered to work for professional societies and serve on their committees. And I want to specifically mention ASME, Orthopedic Research Society, and American Society of Biomechanics. And I also help organize international and domestic conferences under Professor Feng, because whatever he asked me to do, I always just do. And accept assignments as reviewers and associate editor for scientific journals, and Journal of Biomechanics and Journal of Biomechanical Engineering were the key, but I was also involved in many others. And meanwhile, I developed a passion for sports medicine. And soft tissue injury is such devastating and frequent injury, like this professional basketball player for Denver Nuggets. And he has done this motion for so many times, probably a million times. Nothing happened, but just one time, and something happened that he was injured. Both his anterior cruciate ligament, ACL, and the medial collateral ligament, the MCL. And the rate of injury in America is about 150,000 ACL, 100,000 MCL, and 50,000, like this case in this professional basketball player, combined MCL and ACL injury. So this will be actually the focus of my lecture in the later stages of my career. So translation research, me and my team, colleagues, and students did. Also, I tried to put them in decades. In the 70s, we do why you should not do immobilization of joints. In the 80s, we do functional treatment of ligament injuries. And in the 90s, we look improve ACL reconstruction, develop the new robotic UFS testing system. In the new millennia, we do look functional tissue engineering to heal these soft tissues faster and better. And in this just past decade, we look at tissue regeneration with biomedical, biodegradable metallic materials. So I'm going to share some of these research we've done with you along with each decade. So joint immobilization was very popular in the 60s and even early 70s and before that. This is a dog knee. If you immobilize the dog knee for 8 weeks or 9 weeks, after you cut out everything, you can hang a 1 kilogram weight and the joint will not open. So the joint is stiff, and because it's formation of crosslinks in the posterior capsule, and also because of this immobilization and lack of motion, lead to cartilage degeneration. And using a rapid knee, we immobilize it. The top graph shows that the control, the joint move very smoothly with very little torque, but if you immobilize the joint, it is very, very stiff with a huge loop of a hysteresis. But on the other hand, if we go to test the medial collateral ligament itself, we found different story, because the yellow line here is the control, and the blue line here is immobilized. And the stiffness and strength of the ligament, secondary to immobilization, is significantly weakened. So the reason why that happened is actually, besides the tissue become atrophic, it also, the attachment of the ligament to the bone has a lot of osteoclastic activities. It is very bad for the ligament bone attachment. It weakened significantly. And turns out the recovery of this weakening at the insertion is very, very long. Several weeks of immobilization could cause months and months of time for it to recover. It really sometimes never quite recovers. So with this kind of study we have done for various animals, and we've developed a much better appreciation. The ligament and its insertion are indeed alive, and they undergo stress and motion dependent homeostasis. And we also identified the casting, plastic casting of immobilization joints have very long-term deleterious effects. And as a result, it becomes less used clinically. So our group developed a sort of short saying the control motion is good. In other words, we should let the joint move while treating the particular ligament that's injured. And actually, many other famous sports medicine people, like Richard Stedman, Giuliano Cerulli, those are my good friends here, both are my good friends. They have their institution using the same idea of movement. And even Mrs. Obama say, let us move. And finally, AAOS say a nation in motion. So I think the work can be, although we never expected, have long-term influence, impact. So going into the next step on growth, 1980s were my academic growth years. And I built a orthopedic bioengineering laboratory at UCSD at the VA hospital. And the first thing we did during that decade was that we did a lot of work trying to understand what normal ligaments like. And we looking at the biological factors that contribute to the property of these ligaments using the rabbit MCL as a model, because it is the only ligament that has a very good aspect, length versus width ratio. And it's a very well organized tissue to allow us to do many, many studies like anatomy, morphology, collagen and cross-links, tissue development, aging, homeostasis, mathematical analysis, and so on. We also look at experimental factors because ligament is not easy to test because it's so short. And so we have to develop novel experimental apparatus to study what are the effects of temperature, the storage, specimen orientation, rate of strain, and on all of these on structural and mechanical properties and their function in joints. And for example, we find the nonlinear characteristics of the ligament is very important because at low loads, the stiffness is very low so that the joint can move easily. At higher loads, it stiffens up to limit excessive translation, rotation of the two bones that connect. And ligaments are also viscoelastic. We follow Dr. Feng's quasi-linear viscoelastic theory, and we developed with Dr. Abramowitz a new way to analyze the stress relaxation and get the appropriate constant to describe its viscoelastic behavior. So, in other words, the message here is that new data on biology and biomechanics of normal ligaments are needed, and they are used as the basis for evaluating any regenerative healing ligaments. And that's the way we did many studies on that. Now, going back to the service, I really had the privilege to serve. And I asked you earlier to remember ASME, ORS, and ASB. And I was lucky enough that people entrusted me to be the chair of bioengineering division at ASME and president of ORS and ASB, all between 1985 and 1987. It was a tremendous honor, but also a lot of pressure. And I also chair the first AAOS, Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons Symposium, entitled Injury and Repair of Musculoskeletal Soft Tissues. And of course, I was very lucky that our team won Kappa Delta Award, not for ligaments, it was for fracture healing, and also the O'Donoghue Award from Sports Medicine Society. In terms of translation research, the second decade was functional treatment of ligamentous injuries. We developed this model of medial collateral ligament of the rabbit. We actually ruptured it like it was in clinical situation, damaged both the ligament and the attachment sites. And amazingly, these ligament can reconnect it in 10 days. But if you look at the attachment site, the right panel, there were tremendous disruption. And that is really the issue, that you not only damage the ligament, but you damage the attachment evidence there. Of course, the healing process went through inflammatory process, which is 6 weeks, and reparative process is probably up to 12 weeks. And then you go to the remodeling process, which could take up to all year. And amazingly, at 6 weeks, the red line shows that ligaments heal without treatment. And these particularly MCL. And also at 12 weeks, which is the yellow line, you can see the stiffness increase, the ultimate loads increase. And even after 1 year, there are additional improvement. So functionally, by 1 year, the heel MCL works very well, but the ultimate load, the structure strength, never quite reach the normal, does not return to normal. So these kind of studies discovered the MCL actually can heal spontaneously and successfully. And then a clinical study turns out, based on our work, support these findings. And they start treating MCL injuries without surgical management and immobilization. And new paradigm was created for clinical management of usually extra-articular ligaments, and it's going from surgery and immobilization to use bracing and other functional treatment methods. Now, going into the third decade is what I label as maturation in the 1990s. I accepted a new position at the University of Pittsburgh. It was a huge move for me and my family, and also my laboratory, and established the Musculoskeletal Research Center, MSRC. We basically have 4 different sections in MSRC. We do mechanobiology, of course, tissue mechanics, and joint mechanics, as well as computational laboratory. And a huge group of people get it together, biologists, bioengineering, clinicians, working together seamlessly. And that was our philosophy on translational research. Meanwhile, in this decade, as I mature, I received many honors on behalf of me and my team. And I was, as said, I was a member of National Academy of Engineering and Medicine, also Academia Sinica, and won medals that really belonged to my group. And of course, the International Olympic Committee also gave us the Olympic Prize at the 1998 Olympic Games. Inaugural is the President Juan Samaranch, and before that they have a gathering in New York City at the Waldorf, and we all have to wear our tuxedos to join this event. Our family believe in giving back. So with the prize money, we actually give it back by establishing Asian American Institute for Research and Education, or ASIAM for short. It is a public charity. We established it soon after we got the award to mainly support education and research of younger PIs and students. And so far, we have awarded over $1.7 million in scholarships, research grants, and prizes, and also sponsor international symposium and congresses. It is our philosophy that we don't keep research prize money. We share, we put it back into the field, support other people, or to support our research projects. Also, the MSRC philosophy is that we do our best work and we don't chase after any honors awards. That wasn't the purpose. We believe that if we do a good job, we will win some. But if we do win some, we appreciate these recognitions and celebrate each and every one of them, and then use that occasion to challenge yourself to do even better for the future. Now, let me share a little bit of the research work in that decade. We have moved on, we become more sophisticated. We studied the anterior cruciate ligament, which is extremely complicated, and by using a robotic testing system. A robotic testing system, robot is not a very, it's a very dutiful machine. It gave you reproduced positions very accurately in 3-dimensional space. But when you add a little disc here, the purple disc called the UFS, Universal Force Moment Sensor, it became a smart robot because it can using force to control the robot motion. We can do force control, or we can do position control, or we can do hybrid control using this testing system. And this is basically a non-contact method to determine unrestricted multi-degree freedom of knee motion and determined in situ forces that ACL, articular cartilage, other ligaments, meniscus, whatever you like, using the same specimen in response to externally applied loads. Now, how do we do that? Just as an illustration, this is a cadaveric knee, intact knee. We ask the knee to do an extension and a flexion. Meanwhile, the robot recorded all the motion between the femur and the tibia in three-dimensional space. And we could actually reproduce this motion when you have no tissue attached to these two bones whatsoever. The motion can be repeated and the force unit is still the same. So this is a tool that is very important when you want to study something by means of superposition principle. You can see they're not connected, but the motion can continue. And when we apply loads, the knee move from point A to point B in three-dimensional space. We can repeat that. When we cut the ligaments, we can do whatever we want and determine what are the contribute of this particular ligament or tissue. So the data is obtained and force is obtained from the same specimen. And this is very important because once you get the data from the same specimen from intact versus various cutting stage, then you can eliminate the interspecimen variation, which often masks the data changes, contribution of any ligament knee conditions, and greatly increase the statistical power. Now we can do repeated measure ANOVA, and therefore any little difference can be detected easily. This is really a powerful apparatus. We're very proud that the MSRC was the first one to develop it with my Japanese fellow. And now I will venture to guess that at least 50 laboratories worldwide have used this system. So having this system, we can look at ACL reconstruction, we do PCL reconstruction, we could show them to every joint that we have done that in the laboratory. I want, for those of you who are not in orthopedics, I wanted to introduce a little bit about surgical replacement when the ACL is injured. Now, reconstruction using hamstring tendons or patellar tendon, where the graft to replace the ACL in surgery, and like this. So this is the graft, and you can either use interfering screws to hold the graft in place, or you can use other techniques so that the athletes and those of us can go back to work or sports. But after 40 years, 45 years now of ACL reconstruction, we still have many, many issues. So the robotic UFS testing system was used to evaluate various variables for ACL reconstruction, such as selection of grafts, which graft do you choose, soft tissue, and then where do you put the graft, and how much tension to put on the graft, how do you fix the graft, and how much tunnel motion is there, and how does graft heal. So we actually did many studies and published about 75 papers in that in the last 2 decades on animal studies and human cadaver study. We tested 764 human cadaver knees since 1995. And we want to give the data as a scientific basis to understand and to improve ACL reconstruction. And I think the clinical paradigm shift based on the work that's done by us and by others is that more and more we need to learn how the native ACL works and try to approximate them as much as we can. In step 4, is what I labeled it as advocacy. I called to the attention to our field. Ligament tendons at that time was not getting enough attention, in my opinion, and many others in our field. So we established the ISLMT, and we have 18 conferences so far since year 2000. And we took the meeting to Asia a couple of times so that we have participation from Asia. Also, with friends, I started the World Association Chinese Biomedical Engineering. This entity that's sponsoring this webinar. We have nine different world congresses since year 2002, started in Taiwan. Also, I'm proud to get these special recognitions, especially from international organizations. I became honorary international professorships in various universities in China, and IEEE even gave me a gold medal. Thanks, that a lot of that is because I have many friends that I have not offended them. I like them, and I guess they like me. So in terms of work, we do functional tissue engineering and to get the tissue to heal faster and better. For example, we use functional tissue engineering for ACL healing. We take the goat as a model, it's a larger animal model. We cut the ACL and we apply a ECM, extracellular matrix, small intestine submucosa, just one sheet, 200 micrometers. Is so thin that we need to deliver it with gel foam sponge. And then we inject the SIS hydrogel after we wrap it around, and then watch it 12 weeks later. Actually, the transected ACL has healed, and you can see it's healed here, and it's got actually quite well-aligned fibers with spindle-shaped fibroblasts. And more importantly is that it actually created a synovium, which is to protect the healing tissue. This is maybe the reason why it really worked. And when we measure in tensile testing, we find the stiffness has reached about 48% of the normal goat ACL, and the ultimate load is comparable to the historical data on ACL reconstruction. So those are interesting, good results, but I will tell you more about that in this decade, what have we done. Now moving on to 2010 and to 2020. And I have been beginning to ask by people to prognosticate, about predicting the future of biomedical engineering. I feel not comfortable in doing this because predictions are usually made by three kinds of people. First is weathermen. They may be wrong, but we always watch them on TV before we go to bed. And then forecasters, or financial, the stock people and the sports people, they are wrong most of the time too, but we always ask them. And the third kind of person is scientists and professors. We don't know really what the future is, no more than anybody else. But young people always ask us and listen. That's why you can see I'm asked, but my face is a little bit fuzzy, just to let you know that I'm not that sure about prognosticating. So I put a disclaimer like the financial people. Success of the past does not guarantee the same for the future. Now with that, I still want to say something about future. I believe as many of my friends of our age believe that the ability to diagnosis of disease is rapidly rising. We have the capability of find out what is wrong with us. You can see it's a highly exponential curve. On the other hand, effective treatment is actually lagging behind. It's sort of like the current COVID-19. We diagnosed it, we know the problem, but we don't have appropriate treatment solutions. So it seems like a very pessimistic view. But on the other hand, if you are optimist like me, wow, this is huge opportunity for us. We got a lot of things we could do. So for you young academicians, this is a great opportunity for you. We must take advantage, and also you have all the technology available to you to do in-depth basic science research. You will have more reliable clinical outcome data basis for your objective assessment, and you can develop scientific-based treatment strategies. This is a great, great opportunity, huge. And bioengineering will play a key role in all this, because everything starts from molecule at the size of 10⁻⁸ meters to organism, which is 8 decades larger of size. They all involve biomedical engineering. There are many of us working on molecular forces, and we have, for example, cellular study, just so much, including microfluidics, nanotechnology, tissue, of course, and organ is harder, organism is even harder when we put it all together. But these are something that we can do in the future. It's really a limitless opportunity for innovation. For some examples that I know, imaging, you can look at temporal changes without having to cut anything. Tissue regeneration, this is a very exciting topic and area. And then we're engineering better medicine, drug discovery, gene therapy, and nanomedicine, and including direct cellular reprogramming as being done by Professor Kempler of Columbia. And also novel biomaterials. Magnesium is one of them. It's degradable metallic material, which is very, I would talk a little bit about in what we're doing on ACL healing using this material. We can do personalized medicine, and prevention is another thing that we need to be thinking about for the future. And tissue level, a more sophisticated viscoelastic models that cover 3-dimension and large strain nonlinear viscoelastic properties, such as the single integral finite strain theory. And then organ level, looking at the musculoskeletal model of the entire human knee joint, for example, and we can model the extremities, ligaments, joint, tendon, muscle, and so on, doing in vivo activities and analyze them. Basically, biomedical engineering, to me, is the bridge between biology and clinical medicine. With this bridge, the biology can reach clinical medicine much, much easier. And meanwhile, I got some valuable appointments I treasure. I became Distinguished Chair Professor of TMU. The most exciting part is I have a cookie make with my image. And of course, I am endowed Chair Professor Ningbo University and Honorary Professor and advised for Zhejiang University. And I was very proud to be professor at Ningbo University, because Ningbo is my hometown, my old country. I'm also thankful for the legacies. And in the, 2011, I became 70 years old, and Dr. Zhongming Li, Jennifer Wang, and Chiwa Chen, and my pride and joy, Dr. Kirsten Wu, they added a book entitled Flow of a Long River to celebrate my 70th birthday. At the University of Pittsburgh, I actually retired in 2017 as a distinguished university professor emeritus, and the university gave me a retirement party, especially the bioengineering department chair Sanjay Shraf and Harvey Borowitz. They organized a very beautiful retirement party and symposium all-day event. And the chancellors, two provosts, and many other dignitaries of the university came. And meanwhile, my two friends, Dr. Shraf and Borowitz, they have endowed a distinguished lectureship in my name, and also a conference in the name of Savio and Patricia Wu, and I'm really, really grateful to them. Meanwhile, other organizations have awards in my name and medals in my name. And I'm particularly proud of the WACBE's Distinguished Lectureship. And these are these three gentlemen, Dr. Kem Leung, Dr. Zipei Liang, and then Dr. Abe Lee. They are dignitaries in our field, and those of you don't know them, please look them up, because they are the future of our leadership of our organization, our field. Finally, let me share a little bit about the translational research that I'm continuing doing on tissue regeneration with biodegradable metallic materials. As I said earlier, I want to heal the ACL. We want to heal the ACL. We believe it's better to regenerate than reconstruct. At least it's as an alternative. So diagrammatically, this is an ACL that's transected, and then we design a special ring device, and then put it over the ACL and mount it with reparative suture, the yellow suture, and then the fixation suture, that are orange sutures. And then we covered it with ECM scaffold and inject hydrogel. And this way, we hope that we hypothesize that the ring device will disintegrate and resolve as a controllable degradation, and then in time is replaced by healing tissue. Therefore, you end up with a very nicely healed ACL. That was our hypothesis of combining mechanical augmentation, load the ACL while it's healing, and then biological augmentation is accelerate the healing process. And indeed, we find that at 12 weeks, you have a very robust healed ACL with very, very nice, no hypertrophy, and no cytotoxicity, because the magnesium ring and the ring has pretty much disintegrated. And you carry it to a longer term, to 26 weeks, the healing continue to improve. You mature, the tissue is much more mature and robust. The ring is completely degraded, as shown in this histology slide. And the ultimate low of the healed ACL is 35% higher over 12 weeks. And now is 60% higher than if you just use the ACM alone, as we did in last decade. And it is actually 50% higher than ACL reconstruction at 12 weeks. And more importantly, it failed at where the original transection was. That means we can maintain the homeostasis of the ACL at its attachment with the magnesium ring, loading the ACL at its healing. And with this is evidence of success with mechanical augmentation. So hypothesis successfully tested is biological augmentation is to accelerate the healing. The mechanical augmentation is to restore joint stability, load the insertion site, and in combination, they have a very synergistic effect on healing the ACL and giving us a functionally stronger ACL. Continue, we want to try to do clinical translation. We develop a finite element model of the knee using GOAT data. And based on the data for the GOAT, we try to apply that as a criteria for design of human device. And we had to do a customer device that is patient specific. This is where we want to talk about personalized medicine, and also develop arthroscopic implantation techniques so that we can apply to implant this device for ACL healing. Basically, to regenerate rather than reconstruct is our hope, and we believe that healing and regeneration could be an additional choice for treatment of ACL injuries, in addition to these multiple various ways of ACL reconstruction. So to summarize what I have shared with you in the last 45 minutes or so of my academic career, I want to say that I tell you something about my career development, my growth, my maturation, and going into advocacy years and prognostication years. And I share with you also the clinical impact of our translational research in San Diego, as well as at University of Pittsburgh. And my academic history and little stories to share. And I hope that you don't feel that is tooting my own horn, rather is to share with you that stimulate, hopefully is a stimulant to you, and particularly my philosophy of life. Basically, academic career development is really a long game. It's not something a flash in the pan. It is really a long, long game to be useful, to add some information, knowledge to other people, as well as to the field of biomedical engineering. Talking about philosophy, we have our teacher, almost 2,600 years ago, say that to know what you know, to know what you don't know, I think that is even more important. This is knowledge. And I think that me and my many friends and students have adopted this philosophy. And I always say that I have these words of advice, but more importantly, I think if Confucius were alive today, I believe that he will also say, when you do your work, beware of inaccuracies of methodology and equipment that's used to obtain the data, and beware of the report data and the statistical method to use to analyze the data. Those are two big things that I think we should pay attention to wherever we read a scientific publication. Just because the paper is from Wu's laboratory does not mean they should not be scrutinized. And I also have advised my students that good research requires thinking more, asking more, before doing more. The three mores. Now, many of us just do it. And I think that is really not very good. And it turns out that I guess I was ingrained in this philosophy that what I've said is already said in this Chinese book, a quotation of what Confucius said. He said, you learn more, you think more, you ask more, you discuss more before you do more. So it's nothing what I said is really new, but it's a reflection that that old Chinese philosophy is always there in us. Now, more importantly is that philosophy actually do not change. While technologies always change, but the philosophy is, you can see, 2,600 years ago, it is still very applicable today. And it is not just Googling or Baiduing or something that we find everything, because there's many, many fake things in the social media and the media. You need to recognize that quantitative data, it takes hard work, ingenuity, but without them, we don't move forward. Another point I like to share is that we should think and be more like contrarian. We should not just follow what everybody else is doing. Think about it. Maybe you should be the bluefish rather than the goldfish. And I think going in the opposite direction, sometimes we find wonders. And we should always ask why and what first. Why do you want to do something? What to do to solve the problem before actually moving on to how. I always feel how is the easiest of every of these three words. So what I've been telling you the last 40, 50 minutes is really a global village. And I acknowledge all the students, young colleagues that I have, 645 of us in the last 50 years, and many staff members as well. And they are the one that stimulated me. They're the one that helped me to make who I am today. And I'm eternally grateful for their ingenuity, their enthusiasm, and everything they have touched upon my life. And of course, my wonderful family. Last year, we celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary, and these are my two children, my son-in-law, and my two lovely grandchildren, together with my oldest sister. And they always have made me to do the things that is right. And I think they are my inspiration, and they care for me. They make me feel like what I'm doing is really worthwhile. And to conclude, I want to thank everybody and my inspiration, my two lovely grandchildren, Sadie and Arden. And particularly, I want to send a message that my 11-year-old socially conscious Sadie, and do wear a mask. She said also on her mask, I am not sick, I'm being safe. Thank you so very much for your joining us today. It was really a pleasure to share my story with you. And thank you, Ed and Bing Mei.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Wu, and for fantastic presentations. At this time, I'd like to ask you to please unshare your screen so we can share the closing slides. Okay. So before we get into the question and answer, I just want to call your attention to our next WACBE webinar on Saturday, July 11th. We'll hear from NUS Society Chair, Professor C.K. Lim from National University of Singapore, as he will present the mechanobiology of human disease and applications in diagnosis and the therapy. So we hope to see you next WACBE webinar. Please also following the Columbia BME on social media to receive the latest updates. You can see our social media information on these slides. You can also learn more about WACBE by visiting wacbe.net. Okay, so we'll have several questions to get through, so we'll do our best to answer as many as possible. So if we do not end up addressing your questions, you can ask in speakers' contact information on these slides. So please feel free to reach in following the webinar here. So we have a couple of questions here now, and then we Saja Pandey is very active. He has many questions. So I'm going to pick up one question from you and ask Dr. to answer. He was asking, what makes SIS hydrogel material property makes it function differently from other hydrogel? So what is a, the SIS hydrogel is different from other gels?
SIS actually, hydrogel is got a lot of course, factors in them. But the way we use them is not just the hydrogel. We use the sheet of SIS. And SIS is actually, even though it's 200 micrometers thick, it has two significantly different layers. On the luminal side, it regenerates very quickly because it has to repair itself. On the abluminal side, it's a barrier. So you want to have a scaffold that will is a barrier so that the synovial environment cannot attack the healing tissue. But the other side, you have all the growth factors to help generate the tissue. So with this very unique property, we just simply inject some gel in the middle with the growth factors to accelerate the healing process. It doesn't have to be SIS gel, but because we're using SIS scaffold, we use the SIS gel because you don't want to mix them with other things. But that is not to say that we cannot use other gels to heal the ACL. It basically is just a boost to the SIS sheet applied to the wound site.
Thank you, Dr. Wu. The next question is come from Sarah O'Connor. What an impressive trajectory. Here is a young postdoc with passion for solving biological problems that require multidisciplinary joint efforts. What would you recommend me focusing my efforts on? Publications, multidisciplinary network, funding and mentor? Thanks.
Well, yeah, without knowing you personally, I thank you for the question. I think that's a very important question for a star like you in your beginning your career. I think that you finding a mentor is definitely my key, my first suggestion. But of course, you have to be able to find a job or something that in an environment that the mentor is there for you. A remote mentor tend not to be work as well as a more of a in close proximity. So I think that you may not be able to get the first shot. I think you first find an environment that is suitable for you, that is opportunity, and then you in the environment look for someone who really share your goals and you're willing to guide you along. I think that probably is the step. When I was graduating from University of Washington, I actually was lucky because those days PhDs have no jobs. And it was very tough time. Many PhD were driving taxi in New York City. I was lucky to have 3 jobs. And because of Dr. Fong, I find that, well, that choice is easy. You definitely go to UCSD because Dr. Fong is there. And I think that is the way I look at things. I don't look at jobs that necessarily pays more or doing exactly what I'm doing, but it really is take a more distant view about your career development. I hope that is the right answer for you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Wu. The next question comes from Zipei Liang. Hello, Zipei. Savio, fantastic career and talk. Thank you and congratulations. On the hindsight, were there anything you would have done differently? That's the first question. And also looking forward, what do you think are the biggest challenges ahead for bioengineers?
I actually have 0 regrets on my academic career. I'm just very lucky to be at the right place at the right time. And not too many people can say you grew with a field, because bioengineering really was just in its infancy in the 60s. And I was a graduate student then. And I was very lucky to find an advisor who has some actually eye issues and got to collaborate with his eye doctor, ophthalmologist, and very excellent people. And they guided me. So, and then career went on. I had many attractions, do something different, but I've always resisted. And I've always tell many of my friends that everybody should have one career change, but not too many, and which I did in 1990 from UCSD. It was not easy to leave San Diego, but we ventured out to Pittsburgh, which is a great move. I always tell my children that life should get better gradually, like the steps that I show you, not too much up and downs, because that is not a pleasant, it's very pleasant going up, but going down can be very painful. So it's a gradual improvement in life. I hope and I bless you to get the same thing, because it's, you know, if just measure, move, plan ahead, look ahead, keep your sights at your goal. Now, what are the challenges in bioengineering is there's really, we have limited opportunity, because I feel that anything you do, especially in the musculoskeletal area, if you don't have engineering, you don't have function. So we actually hold the trump card of, I'm sorry using the word Trump, but anyway, we actually hold the cards for a real translation. So I really feel that the opportunities are for us. We need to take it. And we need to continue to emphasize our capability to people who don't believe us. And I just don't, I don't have any negative feeling about biomedical engineering. We are in a tremendous field. First of all, the best students, best engineering students at least, come to us. It has been for the last 40, 50 years. And you really have, you couldn't even wish for more, because our successors are all going to be really, really good. At least they have a great start. So I don't really see pitfalls. The pitfall I see, not so much to do with biomedical engineering, is the way that we do things. We must follow a strong philosophy. If we have the good philosophy of life, we will do well. But if some of us will be expedient, shortcuts, and you only look so much. You don't ask so much why and what. You just do how, and you find the papers that suit your results and only quoted those. And I think these are the pitfalls of life that we should avoid, and just follow somebody, guide you, do things right. And I think bioengineering, I wish today I'm 28 years old again and start my career, because the opportunity just is phenomenal. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, Dr. Wu, thanks very much. So we have a lot of more questions, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip a couple of those technical questions, but asking Dr. Wu to answer some more grand vision and big questions. So Chongsen Su asking, what's your secret to select and build strong multidisciplinary team?
I must quote Professor Xu Chen, many of you know. Professor Xu Chen says, you collaborate with people, is you not 50-50, is you 60, I 40. That is a tremendous attitude. Recognizing that you need to collaborate with people because of your own lack of knowledge. You cannot be everything to everybody. So you know these are your strengths, and then you work with other people to add to your strength to solve problems. After all, this is biomedical engineering, biomedical engineering. So you cannot do everything yourself, and you always give first and take second. I think this is what I've been trying to do. And the payoff is great. I tell my students very simple things. I said, be nice to people and good thing will happen. And if you can take that attitude, I think that would be very helpful to you. Don't worry about what's in this for me. And I think that is a defeatist attitude in the career. So that's what I have been doing in my life. And dedication of work is another one, is that when I work with people and teach students, I rewrite all their papers. Every publication that I have, I read them, correct them, reread them. So the secret is that I get up early in the morning, probably 5:30 every morning. I spend an hour and a half to rewrite all the students that have written, fellows, and then give it back to them. Sometimes a paper will go through 10, 11 iterations before we finalize it. I think those are the efforts that you make after a number of years. It's kind of like the Chinese say, the old fool moving the mountain in front of the house, one brick at a time, one stone at a time. It seems to work after a number of years. And I would certainly encourage you to do that.
Okay, I'm going to leave two last questions to our young people. So Zhenren Sen asking, Dr. Wu, thank you for the talk. Can you share with us about how you found your passion and the specific research area of interest in biomedical engineering? As an incoming master's student, I'm overwhelmed by all kinds of fascinating research. Can you give me some advice on how to choose my research focus as a beginner? Thanks again.
Well, thank you for the question. Actually, for me, if you learn the process of doing something well, it is then applicable to anything you want to do in the future. The steps, the process of doing something. So the first thing I emphasize to young people like you is that you learn your process well, or how to do something, why, what, and how first, very well. And these are your tools that you have. And you can then do anything you want to do. I thought I was taught very well when I was at University of Washington. And then when I went to UCSD, this is a brand new field. I have no idea what I'm going to do. But it doesn't matter because I have the confidence that I know how to do something well. So at the first, I studied fracture healing. I thought that was interesting because it's a very mechanical thing, stress analysis. And I also looked at cartilage healing, which is very, very difficult, but it's exciting because osteoarthritis is a big, big problem. Then I also do ligament research because I find that because my interest in sports, that really fascinates me. So in other words, when I started my career, I actually did all three major areas of orthopedic research. It's kind of like everything. So then with time, you will zero into what you really are passionate about, which is, to me, sports medicine. So I hope this is the way that you can look at all these various things that are interest to you. Then you can narrow it down. So it's a funnel process. It is not just take a dot and shoot at the dot and find your passion. But your passion will be developed. And at your current level, I would say maybe give yourself a little bit more time and you'll find it.
Great. The last question is from Elizabeth Shaw, Whistler. Professor Wu, outstanding talk. I have always admired your work and you as an Asian American leading bioengineer. Do you have 5 or 10 years goals like they suggest for faculty, or do you just stumbling around?
Well, thank you very much. That's very kind of you to say that. I must say that I enjoyed this talk in spite of my initial apprehension facing the computer. But I do not have so things like a 5 years plan, 10-year plan. I am more like in the gut person. But I do have goals of what I want to accomplish, but not so much in quantitative terms. I would like to say that I follow my philosophy of life. I follow my desire to be a good mentor and teacher. And then I continue to learn what is new, what is important. I discuss this with my colleagues. And there's always more than enough that you can do. So I'm sorry that I put things in decades because it's for the convenience, but it's actually a fluid process, right? It's not so much a one step at a time. So I like to suggest you to do this rather than say I have a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan. I would like you to, I often ask young people, say, what would you like to be in 5 years? What would you like to be in 10 years? And I think that's enough because the plan making should be following your goal in life. What would you like to be? And you know, but when I was younger, I would say maybe I do have some guidelines. And as I grow older, this 5-10-year plan become fuzzy. I did have one that I can share with you that I said, I need to be full professor before I turn 40. I did that. And I became when I was 38. So that, if you want to say that, yes, it is. But I don't have any 5-year plans for research because often research is 2 steps back, 1 step backward, 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. Sometimes 1 step forward, 2 steps backward. So it's very hard to make plans. But always in your life, it's always be nice to your colleagues and friends and students. Be nice to people. That's probably the most important plan.
Okay, that's all the time we have today. I would like to thank Dr. Wu once again and for such a fantastic talk, as well as all the wisdom and advice. And also thank you all for attending our first WACBE webinar. And be sure to register for our next webinar on July 11th. So the webinar will be, the video webinar will be available, and stay tuned following the Columbia BME social media, and then we will let you know where to find those videos. Otherwise, have a great weekend. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ping Mei. Thank you, Ed.
Yeah, that's great.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.